Eternals ultimately is a sad story. And I don't mean that in terms of the plot of the movie, I mean that in the terms of the meta. As this movie actually breaks away from the Marvel formula for the most part. And that might be good or bad depending on your mileage with this movie. As I've heard criticism in terms of a lot of Marvel movies that they tend not to take themselves too seriously, that the constant jokes undermine the seriousness of certain plot elements or situations or character deaths, stuff along those lines. And this movie does that. It takes itself very seriously. It adheres to its plot. It doesn't undermine its plot at all by making quippy references to how silly their situations are or anything like that. I mean, at most you get one character who kind of does that who's not part of the Eternals, but he's not in the movie that long, so that's kind of a non issue for the most part. And the fact that there's such a polarizing response to this movie, yeah, it's understandable. It's very understandable. Now, did I enjoy the movie for the most part? Yeah. It was actually a pretty decent movie. But do I understand why people might not enjoy it? Oh, most definitely. This is not a movie for everyone. This is a exposition heavy movie with way too many characters that you barely get to know any of them. Like, they each have these little moments here and there that show a world of personality, but I can understand where some people are just like, yeah, that's not enough. Now, saying it's worse than Thor the Dark World? No. I'm sorry, no. Thor the Dark World was terrible. Just terrible. And, your mileage may vary in terms of whether or not you think it's better than Iron Man 3 or Ant-Man and the Wasp or just Ant-Man in general. Like, it's kind of like the middle of the road kind of movie where you have your, I don't know, Black Widows and your Captain Marvels and stuff like that, where it's just like, I mean, for the most part, it's pretty sound. Hell, even amongst what I would consider bad Marvel movies, it's a little bit above that just because there's kind of enough going on here that you should never truly be bored, but I can also understand where you would be bored. It's a very polarizing movie in terms of that. And this is kind of what, to a certain degree, I expected from when Guardians of the Galaxy was released, where it would come out and it would just be this movie that had all this lore that just people couldn't vibe with. It's the movie that I always expected to come from a Marvel movie, in that there's so much going on, but at the same time, little enough that people just don't vibe with it to a certain degree. The art direction, masterful, beautiful. And in terms of a lot of the plot elements, it is pretty decent and straightforward to a certain degree. I enjoyed the characters. I enjoyed the direction that it went. I've read a few Eternals comics here and there, and this movie feels very in line with all of that. But I will say the biggest disappointment for me was the Deviant. They were non-entities throughout this movie. They were a kind of a plot point that just, by the end, it's cleanup duty. Like, they are just not something that feels like it needs to be present in the movie anymore, which is the ultimate disappointment. Now, I'm going to get into the plot. I'm going to get into spoilers. If that's all you wanted to hear, yeah, it's fine if you want to go see it, but it's not something I'd say rush out and go see. Like, you have no obligation to rush out and go see this aside from just supporting Marvel's work. That's it. Like, this is not a movie for people just looking for the action in a blockbuster or anything like this. This is a movie for people who want Marvel movies to do well and just enjoy their time. But getting into spoilers and the plot, you find out 7,000 years ago, the Eternals came to Earth sent by one of the Celestials, Erishim, to Earth to fight the Deviants, and they do just that. For thousands of years, they're fighting Deviants, saving humans left, right, and center. And the one Eternal who probably has the closest relation with humanity is Cersei, who has the ability to transmute matter into something else. Like take a desk and turn it into sand, or take water, turn it into stone. She can transmute anything into anything else. Law of equivalent exchange be damned. And she has the closest bond with people. Like even when they were arriving on Earth, she immediately was just like, Earth is so beautiful. And she spends a lot of time with the people. And that isn't to say the other Eternals don't, but it's to varying different degrees that the Eternals have close relations with the populace. You have Icarus, who Cersei ends up in a relationship with, but he only cares about Cersei. That's it. But over time, after a few thousand years, they pretty much do away with all the deviants. But ultimately, relations between the Eternals break down as they see a lot of conflict going on in the human world. And for one of their rank, Thena, she ends up suffering from something called the Magwari, which basically, since the Celestials live for so long, they reach a certain point where their memories become too much for them, and they become kind of jumbled up. And so they kind of have to be purged of those memories in order to just kind of keep their head on straight. But the problem is you basically lose a lot of what makes you you to a certain degree. And ultimately, one of their rank, Gilgamesh, Athena is the one who's able to form weaponry out of cosmic energy, and you have Gilgamesh, who is super strong, and he decides to take Thena, and away someplace so that she can just keep her memories and not be a danger to the rest of the group. Another of their rank, Druid, he sees the conflict going on with the humans and stuff, and he just wants it to end. He has the ability to control people, so he just wants to end it through his control. And they kind of allow him to go off and do his own thing, start like a coven or whatever. And Ajak, the leader, who is able to speak with Celestials, just kind of allows them to go their separate ways, experience life, do whatever until it's time for them to leave. Because their job is done, the Celestials will call on them eventually, and they'll be able to return home or whatever. Cut to another several thousand years later. No, it was not thousands of years, 500 years later. And they've received no word. You have Cersei and Sprite, who Sprite is the little one, kind of Peter Pan-esque girl who is able to create illusion. And they're living out in London. Cersei has found a new lover because Icarus just kind of peaced out. And now she's with this guy called Dane Whitman. And they work at a natural history museum, teaching and stuff like that. And he's trying to move in with her. He actually knows a little bit about them being Eternals because of Sprite, but he doesn't quite believe it. That is until one of the deviants, Crow, resurfaces and goes after Cersei and Sprite. And they do their best to fight him off, but it takes Icarus showing up, who has the ability to fly and shoot cosmic energy laser beams out of his eyes, to kind of shoo Crow away. But for the Eternals, that means that the Deviants are back all of a sudden, and they have to kind of plan for what to do next. But before the Deviant Crow left, they noticed that it seemed to have healing powers, and the one Eternal who had healing powers is Ajak, their leader. And when they travel to go see Ajak, they find her dead, which is very bad. The person who's able to commune with the Eternals, who can heal both herself and the other Eternals, is gone. That's a major problem. But then Ajak's ability to talk to the Celestials is transferred over to Cersei, but she has little control over it, and she ends up learning that something called the Emergence will be happening soon. So Cersei, Sprite, and Icarus go traveling around to get their various different allies and tell them that, the Deviants are back, Ajax is dead, their mission is soon to come to an end. There's a lot of information to kind of get out there. So first they travel over to Kingo, who has become this Bollywood star. Kingo has the ability to shoot cosmic energy from his fingertips like a gun. It's actually pretty cool. And he's become this big Bollywood actor, pretending like he's this constant descended line, like, oh, I'm my great-grandfather, my grandfather, my father, and so on and so forth. It's all one big family line. And he's become this big action star in these Bollywood musicals and stuff, and he even has a valet who becomes involved with the movie for a little bit, Kuran, who is Kingo's manager and all that, but he knows all about the Eternals and all that good stuff. Kingo is probably the biggest source of comedic relief, Kingo and Kuran, and it's not like they make pop culture references, they just make witty remarks here and there from time to time. It's kind of cute. And then they go to see Gilgamesh and Thena, who are living out in the depths of the outback, and Gilgamesh has already encountered a deviant and fought it off, and Thena, she's still plagued by the Magwari and kind of losing herself from time to time, but they're informed of what happened with Ajax, that they gotta go out, stop this deviant and get the band back together, basically. So they take their whole entire group, they head over to go see Druig, who still has kept his little commune even 500 years later. However, before they got there, Cersei had finally managed to fully talk with Erishim, who fully spills the beans on their whole entire situation. Essentially, the Eternals are not technically living beings, they're artificially created humanoid machines for the most part, who basically are sent to different planets to stop the Deviants, who were also created by the Celestials. Initially, the Deviants were supposed to go to a planet, kill off the biggest apex predator on that planet to give rise to intelligent life. Humanoid life, basically. However, the Deviants tend to be a little too ravenous, and so the Eternals are sent in to kind of kill off the Deviants, and then allow humanity to grow, populate, develop, and get to a point where they can just energize the planet. And each planet that a Celestial chooses has a cosmic seed in it, which gives birth to an Eternal. Well, no, not birth to an Eternal, birth to a new Celestial. And the Celestial within Earth is Tiamat, who will soon be given birth to. That's what's happening very soon within the Eternals timeline. And apparently they've been doing this for millennia. It's just that every time a Eternal is birthed from a planet and that planet is destroyed, the Eternals are reset with no memories of what happened over several thousands of years. They have no memory of the people they used to be on that planet. Everything is reset back to zero, and they just kind of go out and do it all over again. So it's a lot to take in for a lot of the Eternals, and Druig takes it pretty hard because it's just like, so we've just been going out on these cosmic suicide missions. So there's a bit of contention between all of the Eternals, but they're not able to dwell on this as they're set upon by the Deviants and Crow, and this big, pretty cool battle takes place. Unfortunately, the scene is really kind of dark, so sometimes you lose track of the Deviants and the darkness of the jungle that they're in and stuff, but it's some pretty cool action scenes. Unfortunately, during the battle, Gilgamesh is killed by Crow, and Crow siphons off Gilgamesh's power just like Ajax. But Crow then becomes a lot more humanoid to the point where Crow can now talk. And you find out Crow's motivation, where he's just like, you kill us, we kill you. You are no heroes. You are destroyers. You're not protecting this planet. You're just saving it to be destroyed with the utmost population, basically. Which is true. It's very true. It's a very unfortunate situation, all things considered. And, now they've lost Gilgamesh, who was a pretty badass fighter, I gotta say. I was really kind of sad to see Gilgamesh go, because he was the coolest in terms of combat, especially when you just go slapping or smacking a deviant. It's just like one of your best fighters is now down, but they end up cremating Gilgamesh, then heading over to see Phastos, who is the inventor of the Eternals, who has, kind of taken it the hardest living on Earth. He helped them at one point just a little bit to develop, gave them their first little push. But then you got around to the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki and all that, and then he just started blaming himself for ever pushing humanity down the path of growing with their inventions and stuff, so he gave up on inventing altogether. And has this family with his husband and his son, and Icarus and Circe pay him a visit, unfortunately delivering a lot of bad news. Phastos is another one of the more funny of the Eternals, and another probably one of my favorites, because he's constantly creating stuff on the fly, but they need Phastos's help in order to create something that can stop the emergence of this new celestial. So they head over to where their ship is, the Domo, where Makari, the last Eternal, who has the power of super speed. Like, I love Makari and her super speed. It is awesome. It's so cool to see in a lot of scenes. And she's just been chilling out on their ship for like 500 years, just grabbing interesting stuff here and there. Makari's a little bit of a thief and a kleptomaniac, honestly. But as they head to their ship, Phastos works on something that will allow Druig to put Tiamat back to sleep. However, unfortunately, it is revealed that Icarus has actually known about their mission because Ajax knew. Ajax, had told Icarus hundreds of years ago, like when they killed off the last of the deviants, or so they thought. And when it got close to the emergence of the Celestial, Ajax had informed Icarus, and Ajax, who had been just living around Earth and experiencing things here and there, kind of got a conscience, got cold feet about it, because she felt there was something special about Earth, especially the way they defeated Thanos. It's just like, after everything they did, it seems really kind of messed up to, like, just let it all just end, like, after all that effort, which I could gel with. It's just like, they did so much to try to save their world, and then just for a celestial to pop out of the earth and destroy all of that. They saved countless worlds in doing this, and it all comes to an end? That's kind of a bit of bullshit, so I could get where Ajax is coming from. Unfortunately, Icarus is kind of burdened by this, because he had really kind of believed in their mission. Icarus really kind of drunk the Kool-Aid, and so because Ajax wanted to deviate from their purpose, Icarus had taken Ajax to Crow for Crow to kill her, as Icarus had discovered that a few of the deviants had actually managed to survive. Just not enough to actually harm the population. In fact, some of them were like sealed in ice apparently, only to be freed just recently because of the emergence. So Icarus had sacrificed Ajax to Crow, who absorbed her power, and then just made it seem like Ajax was attacked on her little farm in South Dakota or whatever. And so Icarus immediately marches in, destroys Phastos' work, advises them against their course of action, is determined to have the Celestial emerge, And ultimately, the only one to actually side with Icarus is Sprite. As we come to find out, Sprite has been very resentful about their life. Sprite is eternally trapped in the body of basically a child, constantly has to move around because they never age, she never ages, and has always had this bit of a love for Icarus and kind of always been jealous of Cersei. And so Sprite sees this as an opportunity to just have Icarus all to herself. It was very sad stuff for the most part. So they leave to ensure that their mission is accomplished. And Kingo kind of disappointed me because Kingo, kind of accepted the fact that the Celestial will emerge. He thinks that it's the way of things because, when the Celestial emerges, they're able to convert the energy of their creation into creating a new universe. And so by stopping the emergence, that prevents a new universe from being born. And while Kingo's not like, I'll fight you for this, he also doesn't wanna get in the way of this. It's kind of like, if you guys win, you win. If you lose, you lose. It is what it is. And so Fastos manages to complete his device called the Unimind in order to bond all the Eternals and enhance the powers of Druig so that he could put the celestial Tiamat to sleep. But unfortunately, once they get to where Tiamat is first going to emerge, of course, Icarus does his damnness to stop them. And you get this pretty cool action scene, and things become even more complicated when Crow comes in, just generally wanting a revenge. But it's just like, by this point, it's just like, Crow's kind of become an afterthought. Icarus has taken the role of the main villain, so it's just like, hey, Athena, sick 'em. And Crow gets in this fight with Athena, tries his best to use Gilgamesh's memories to manipulate her, because Gilgamesh was the only one who could just, bring her out of her kind of madness or whatever. But Athena manages to gain enough of herself to just slay Crow. It's almost kind of anticlimactic how she does it, but he's taken care of. Cersei is forced to go after Tiamat because Icarus injures Druigs, making it so that he can't put Tiamat to sleep without expending more energy than he has, but Druig manages to knock out Sprite, who comes after Cersei. And so you have this great fight with Fastos and Makari going after Icarus. Fastos manages to bind Icarus down. Meanwhile, Cersei, tries to use her abilities to turn Tiamat to marble, basically. But Icarus manages to free himself from Fastos' binds, goes after Cersei, has her dead to rights, but in the end he can't do it. He's just too in love with her, and ultimately they all manage to bond through Tiamat. They manage to have a bit of a connection with Tiamat during the emergence, and they're able to use Tiamat's own power combined with getting additional power from Icarus because he joins with Cersei, as well as Sprite, who also ends up helping out, and Cersei fully turns Tiamat to marble. And honestly, Tiamat's emergence was like the coolest thing in this movie, because the island that they're on is where Tiamat's hand is coming out, and in the distance you can see Tiamat's head popping out of the earth, and it's just like, man, that alone would have caused utter catastrophe on the whole of Earth. Like, geez, but it's the sweetest visual. Like, dude, I can't highlight it more. It is the coolest. But Icarus ends up being plagued by guilt when the job is done over what he had done, and he led to the death of Ajax, the death of Gilgamesh, and fighting against his fellow Eternals. So Icarus, much like his name, flies into the sun to kill himself, and I'm just like, well, shit. Ain't that some shit? Like, damn. And for Sprite, who has never gotten to grow up or have a life of her own, Cersei uses the last of the power from the Unimind to turn Sprite fully human. so that she can have her own life. And because the actor was only 15 and she's eventually going to get older and grow to some degree, and it's just like, that's why you probably should have chose Maisie Williams for this role. Maisie Williams ain't growing anytime soon. And so the Eternals part ways, with Thena, who doesn't have much of a reason to remain on Earth, going with Druig and Makari, who had a cute little bit of a romance going on, I won't lie, it was pretty nice. They decide to board the Domo, their ship, and find the other Eternals to tell them about what their mission actually is from the Celestials and stuff like that. And Cersei, Phastos, Kingo, and Sprite stay on Earth, with Sprite taking on a normal life, Kingo continuing his Bollywood stuff, Phastos has an actual family he really cares for, and Cersei, is in a relationship. And as she goes back to Dane, who has information about his family legacy, all of a sudden, Cersei, Phastos, and Kingo are just pulled into space as Erisham just shows up like, y'all motherfuckers thought you could end a celestial and spare humanity and get away with it? Yeah, no. I actually really loved this moment. I was just like, oh shit. It was just such an oh shit moment. It's just like, yeah, the giant space deity is pissed. Y'all thought this was just gonna end? Well, honestly, they actually kind of considered that there would probably be repercussions from what they were doing, but it was just like, yeah, it was the last effort we could possibly have. But he's just like, I'll spare humanity if your memories show that humans are worth living. So he's just basically gonna watch the lives of the Eternals and see, just like, what was so fucking important that you had to kill the newborn? And so he just kidnaps Cersei, Phastos, and Kingo and goes about his business to be like, yeah, and I'll be back for your bitch ass Earth and find and judge this shit. I'm gonna judge the fuck out this shit. And he pieces off. It was actually kind of cool. Meanwhile, Thena, Makari, and Druig, who have been on their ship for a good hot minute, are just like, okay, we have gotten no communication from the Eternals back on Earth. Ooh, that might mean that Erisham came back. This is not good. But they're interrupted by the arrival of the a character who I was not expecting to see, but it's also awesome to see him there. Pip, who is the troll, who is kind of short. He's basically a hobbit for the most part, who loves to get drunk, who has the ability to teleport anywhere in the galaxy, no matter where it may be. Well, some other places aside the galaxy. He shows up with Thanos' brother, Eros, aka Star Fox, who is also an Eternal, confirming that Thanos was in fact an Eternal. And he's just like, I'm here to help you find your friends, because they're in a ton of trouble. And I really love that ending scene. It's just like, yes, that is so cool. So confirmation that Thanos was in fact an Eternal, but I mean, stuff happened. There's a bit of a difference with those Eternals and these Eternals, and if this movie gets a sequel, we'll probably see this, which is kind of hard to say considering the reception. Just oof. But I'm sorry, if Thor: The Dark World could still get us into Thor Ragnarok, I think this could get a sequel. And then you get the very last scene, which is Cersei's boyfriend Dane Whitman opening up a chest which has the cursed ebony blade of the Black Knight, which he's just like, okay, I gotta take this cursed blade from my family and go save Cersei. And as he reaches for it, a voice off screen tells him, are you sure you want to do that? And you'd only know this because of the credits. Not even the credits, he was uncredited, but it is the voice of Mahershala Ali, the voice of Blade. Blade, the Daywalker, the Vampire Hunter, which is pretty cool, but man, as soon as I heard his voice, I knew it had to have been Blade. But it's just like I wanted to see him in the Blade outfit, and the fact that I didn't is the freaking most biggest cop out possible. I am so pissy about that, but that's the movie, and it's it's pretty good. I enjoyed it for the most part, but again, I see why some didn't. They changed around a lot of things in terms of the Eternal storyline, like it not so much some of the Eternals turning on each other because I mean they've lived thousands of years, and honestly even in the comics one Eternal or two is turning on the other. In most stories it's Druig who turns on him because he has delusions of grandeur and he tends to be a controlling asshole. In one storyline, it was Sprite who was just pissy. In the original series, Sprite was a dude and was just mad about most of the same things Sprite was mad about in this movie, but it was the fact that Sprite kind of wanted to. It was either get with Cersei or Athena, and I think it was Cersei who had pretty much been with every Eternal aside from Sprite, so he was also kind of pissy about that. So, Sprite's turn made a lot of sense, honestly, to me. And I think they did a good job of portraying Sprite's insecurities about her life and all that. Cersei's relationship with Dane Whitman happened in the comics, as well as her associating with Icarus. You kind of figured that Icarus was going to be the one to turn, at least I did, because as the movie went on and we had met pretty much all of the Eternals in modern day, I realized Icarus is the only one who has no connection to humanity whatsoever. Like, at all. He barely talks in a lot of situations or scenes. He's not really interacting too much with many of the characters. I'm just like, it's starting to kind of feel like he might be the secret villain as soon as I thought that it's revealed that he's the secret villain of this movie, which, again, really sucks for the character of Crow because Crow just stops feeling like a villain. By that point, it's just like, okay, so Crow is not even the main villain. Athena was badass, one of the more badass Eternals, played by Angelina Jolie. Cersei's powers were pretty cool, and ultimately making her the hero of things is fine because she's one of the more prominent of the Eternals aside from Icarus. It actually kind of sucked that Selma Hayek's Ajax was kind of a non-entity within the movie. I thought that was kind of sucky, but it was, I don't know, it tends to kind of happen with a lot of the major leaders of the Eternals. Normally, the leader of the Eternals is Thena's father, Zurus, but if you had had him in the movie, Ajax would have had even less of a role, as so I guess that's fine. Kingo was fun, a lot of fun, but it could a bit of hit or miss with his character. Honestly, he could have actually not been in the movie and things would have been fine to a certain degree, which is unfortunate. Sprite, very important, I feel. Phastos was pretty cool, and the first gay superhero within the MCU, which I thought was pretty awesome. Makari was also really cool. Loved it. Loved Makari. And the fact that she did sign language was also pretty awesome. A fun character there. Druig, also kind of cool because he was a bit of a red herring, and it's just like, okay, is Druig kind of behind some of this? Because it felt like one of the Eternals had to have been behind this, because it's just like, yeah, the Deviants were not smart enough to be able to just kill off one of their own so easily. It felt like there had to be more to it than that. And Gilgamesh was literally only important because of his connection to Athena. That's about it. And I continue to be kind of disappointed by the bare bones role Crow had. The deviants are usually supposed to be at least a little bit more intelligent and important than this, able to plan and stuff like this, but this movie just made them generic CGI monsters, which that really is a very unfortunate part. Part of me kind of hopes Crow comes back to some degree, but if this is all you're gonna do with the character, yeah, I guess it's better off dead. Once again, Marvel just having these nothing villains, but Erishim the Judge, kind of cool. All things considered. They did some pretty awesome stuff with the Celestials, and I'm interested to see where they take these characters further down the line. And with the way that they had it so that the Celestials implant these cosmic seeds within planets and stuff like that, that ended up being one of the reasonings behind why Galactus feeds on planets in order to be the predator that preys upon the eggs of celestials, which is just like, yeah, that's a great way to segue right into Galactus. So I am so ready for that. The thing with Tiamat is they merge two different storylines, and that one storyline is of the cosmic seed and finding out that one of the reasons what the Eternals do is that they're basically protecting a world only for it to be sacrificed, and there ended up being a bit of infighting amongst them, which ultimately they kind of merged two different storylines, which I thought was a pretty good direction to go in. And also the legend of Tiamat, the dreaming celestial, who had actually tried to protect the deviants' lives back in the day. He used to be just another celestial, but he chose to protect the deviants to some degree, and he had been sealed within the earth in this eternal slumber by the celestial, and the deviants wanted to awaken him as they saw him as their god and stuff. And that was the storyline where where Sprite had made all of the Eternals think that they were humans and stuff. They also changed around the background of the Eternals, making it so that the Eternals weren't humans to begin with. Same with the Deviants, that they were just creations by the Celestials, which, I mean, that's kind of fine because that connection between the deviants and the Eternals with the humans is kind of a non-entity to a certain degree in the comics. Because honestly speaking, the deviants and Eternals end up so different from humanity aside from just being humanoid that this explanation of what they are just kind of just like, yeah, okay, whatever. It doesn't change too much because, I mean, in the comics the Eternals can die and just have their memories and personalities uploaded to another body, so it's just like, okay, I mean, they're essentially machines in the comics anyway. They're not human in any way. So it's just having them be synthetic humanoid beings, it's just kind of par for the course for me. So, not too many changes that really hurt me. It was cool seeing Eros. I'm interested to see what they do with the brother of Thanos and the involvement of Pip the Troll, which, oh man, it killed me when Pip the Troll showed up just drunk off his ass. It was fun because, you read the comics, that's usually how things go. Pip the Troll and Eros just traveling around the galaxy trying to right wrongs. But since Thanos isn't alive anymore, it makes me wonder if we're going to hear some backstory from Eros. And another one of my disappointments was the fact that Dane Whitman never suited up as the Black Knight. So I'm just looking forward to whatever happens next with Dane Whitman. But all in all, decent enough movie. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Did you like it? Did you hate it? Were you not feeling it? Are you just indifferent to it? I'd say there's nothing in this movie to hate, but I could see someone being indifferent. If you hate this movie, I'd love to hear why. Because it doesn't feel like it's deserving of hate. But if you love this movie, I don't know. You might need to calm down a little bit. Like, this is a very middle of the road movie that just helps to build a bigger universe for Marvel. Like, this feels like a branching of something bigger. And I hope they get to show something bigger because the Eternals, they're not Marvel's next big super team. Hell, half of them are dead or away or captured or whatever. So, considering the way that the movie ends, it's just like, take them or leave them. But again, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. If you like this video, please like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for notifications. And until next time, I've been Duuz-Diz-Din, and I will see you later. Bye-bye.